Silver Doctors live on air. It is Wednesday, the 11th day of the month of September, and we are live. I got my better half with me, Mr. Paul Half Dollar. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good, Mike. How are you doing today?
I am excellent. Of course, as everyone knows from the very subject title, as well as all the stuff happening in the media, there's a lot of things to talk about. So we will not run out of time for not having much to talk about today. So
Yeah.
welcome to the channel, everybody. Happy to have everybody join us. As always, in the chat, let us know where you're watching from, and we'll definitely acknowledge your presence. It's always a blessing to have people hanging out with us. So thanks for joining us thus far.
It is. Yes. Thank everybody for tuning in. Um, there is so much going on right now in the markets and in the economy. It's amazing, Mike.
Oh my goodness, it's yeah, we're in, and we're gonna get into it, but yeah, it's just yeah, something has to give pretty soon because you can't have all these different headwinds blowing and something not fall over or crash or come crumbling down. So it is what it is. But let me check into the chat. It looks like we got some thoughts or questions out there. And as always, there's a number 567-336-0844. Make sure you guys, if you have a thought or a question you want to share with us, make sure you give us a call, and I'll definitely try to get you on here. And as long as everything works smoothly, we should be fine. So, just to acknowledge a couple people, we got what is a name? Says we are being shown the door, but buy silver before you get locked out. We got a finance freak. That's a nice little long statement there. Usury and Graph is all the banks know, yet so many people are still Chase, Bank of America, etc. Yeah. Jamie Dimon. Yeah, we're gonna talk about Jamie Dimon's recent, thoughts yesterday. We got is good, no good. We got low blood pressure. We got real ALSG fans, and what else? That's Mike and Jeff. So everybody, welcome. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. So let's so Paul, why don't you kick it off for us, and let's get into some of your thoughts and things that you want to start off with, and then we'll just take it from there.
Okay. Sounds good. Yes. Welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in. On Monday, I was saying that I was thinking gold and silver were going to go under $1,518, and we've seen that. Yesterday and Monday were pretty slow as far as the economic events calendar were concerned.
Yeah.
But things pick up starting today through the end of the week, right? We've got PPI today, right, which is the producer price index, which is basically, how much are prices going up on, the raw materials that people use to make things with. And then tomorrow we get the CPI, right, which isn't the PCE, but it's still one of the government's inflation indicators.
Yeah.
So that's the consumer price index. Then on Friday, we get the August retail sales number. And President Trump tweets out about all these numbers, right? So the other thing that I was looking for this week is for President Trump to start, I called it attacking the Fed in my title. I didn't call it bullying, but in my tagline, I put bullying, right? I got so much hate mail on that, Mike. They're like, you should not be political. This is about the market and economics. And I'm like, but wait a second,
Yeah.
President Trump is tweeting about the market and the economy. How is this political? I'm just calling it like it is because I said that. Be on the lookout for President Trump start bullying the Fed.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I was writing this morning, and as I'm looking at the charts and setting up the charts and writing, bam, this tweet comes up, and he's calling the Fed boneheads and calling for negative interest rates and all this and all that. I mean, it is just really off the chain right now, Mike.
Yeah. And there's no way you can separate politics from our financial system because it's all coming to a head right now when you have the president being as outspoken as he is, comment on every single thing he feels like he's speaking off the top of his mind, and everybody, the markets are responding, so it's interconnected.
Yeah. So let's start there. Do you want to pull up that tweet to start there?
All right, give me 1 second. I can definitely pull that up. Let me.
And in the tweets and the attacks on the Fed. See, here's the thing about that, right? Because someone was like, someone also said like, you're defending, because I said the Fed's not going to be able to do anything about it this week. And someone's like, you're defending the Fed. You're saying the Fed's not going to be able to defend themselves. Why are you defending the Fed? No, I'm not defending the Fed. See, what happens is, traditionally speaking, right, next week is the 2-day FOMC meeting, the 2-day Federal Open Markets Committee meeting.
Yeah.
Right, so that's when they decide, right? Like if they're just going to decide all of a sudden that vote, they've already decided what they're going to do regardless.
Yeah.
Right? They just don't tell us ahead of time. But that's when they decide on their interest rate move, right?
Right.
So 1 week before, as per tradition, to not spook the markets, so to say, they don't give interviews, they don't give speeches, they don't fire off tweets. They're not doing any of this stuff. So it gives basically what I said on Monday. It gives President Trump carte blanche to attack the Fed. And then I also said bully, because I mean, basically that's what it is bullying. This is a new term that everybody comes up. You know, when me and you were growing up, there was no such thing as bullying. They were just bullies, and we dealt with them. You know?
Exactly.
Now, I mean, it's like this huge thing, right? It's like, you know, we got to report the bullying. But so that's me going with the Fed. And so the Fed can't do anything about it, and it's only going to increase with the pressure until next week. Oh, and the bond market is really moving crazy in the last couple of days too, so that's something to talk about.
Yeah.
So once again, I'm all over the board and hogging the mic, and that's not what I want to do. Hey. It's just going to show you there's so much going on right now.
It's all good, my friend. So I pulled up Mr. Twitterman, the president, and his most recent tweets that some things that you highlighted. So. It says the Federal Reserve. Let me pop this back open. It says the Federal. Whoa, it's too big now. Give me 1 sec. Okay, there we go. All right, it says the Federal Reserve should get our interest rates down to zero. Should get our interest rates down to zero or less. Now, when I read that part about zero or less, I'm thinking like, does he have any concern whatsoever for your average saver / user of the Federal Reserve note? And then, what really got me to think about is how dangerous this is for savers and investors. Like people who have cash parked, expecting to earn something, it's going to be very problematic because you're going to have to become more riskier with your assets if you're trying to make it grow a little bit. So, yeah, man, go ahead.
In addition to that, we're talking about money printing here, right? In its purest form, so to say, because of the negative interest rates, right? So you're not going to, so people on a fixed income, we hear this all the time, but it's true, right? If you're on Social Security or if you're on, a pension plan that, that was when you started drawing from 20 years ago, that is not keeping up with the real inflation rates because of these interest rates that are being constantly driven down, because of this quantitative easing and because of all these things, right? So, this is, and then look at the second part of that tweet, right? That's kind of lost in the sauce right there within it. But, you just got to look at those two words, substantially lengthening the term, right? So it's like, not only is he talking about negative interest rates, but he's talking about ultra long bonds. I like to talk about the 10-year note, right? Yesterday in your great interview with Charles Hugh Smith, you were talking about the long bond, right? The long bond is a 30-year bond. Well, now it's going to be the ultra long bond. And what's that going to be, like a 100-year bond? So not only are, what you said, the pension plans and the retirement plans and the savers just getting crushed with all of this stuff. I mean, bad. This is bad news all around. What is it saying about our kids? This is like totally sticking it to the future of America. I mean, this is just so sick and twisted. I don't know how anybody can say any of this stuff is any good. But sure enough, I get all the hate mail all the time coming into our email address. I mean, it's just, that's another reason why I know something's going to happen, because the hate mail just keeps on increasing. It's amazing, right?
Yeah. Now, and another thing to look at is like, where does all this, where do you go from here? Like, and so I'm seeing all the necessary indicators that's flashing red before my eyes based upon hearing about all the things that's not being covered on mainstream news. But there's millions of people that still go and base their decisions upon financial advisors and the conventional advice that was outdated a decade ago when the recession came into being and then monetary policy took over. And so, as I was mentioning to Charles Smith, I asked him what his thoughts were about, monetary policy moving forward, and about how the central banks have put themselves in a position where they are the ones that are going to be called upon for whatever reason, and there's not much they can really do beyond, print and, just print. Hell, basically just debt. That's the only thing that can really be done at this point. And it's just like it's millions of people will, lose everything that they thought they owned in a sense, if it's based upon digits and solely paper. So, yeah, it's a tragedy, man.
Yeah, it is. The dollars are going to be vaporized. And, we keep talking about it. The dollar's going to take a hit. The dollar, we say it week in and week out. And sure enough, we have more proof today the dollar's going to take a hit. They're telling us the dollar's going to take a hit. Last week when the Fed was when Powell was in Zurich giving that speech, he was like, well, one of our important tools that we used last time that we still use is what we call forward guidance. He was saying that to like some college class or something in Switzerland. I don't remember exactly who was the audience, but it was like a college setting there or something. Or at least college people were invited. But, that whole forward guidance thing, that's, preparing the market for what is coming, right? So when President Trump is saying all this stuff about the dollar, when he's saying all this stuff about interest rates, when he's saying all this stuff about, bond yields and long-term bonds, he's preparing the market for what is coming, but nobody's taking heed of this. So what's the reaction? So President Trump said this morning, we need to have negative interest rates and ultra-long bonds, and gold and silver go down in price. How do you explain that, Mike? It's like, come on.
And so everything is upside down, and what's right what's right is probably wrong. What's wrong is right. So they're trying to really keep people confused. And it's kind of interesting on our end because we're aware of all this stuff and we see it for what it really is. It's a lie, it's manipulation, it's deceit, and everything you can give it. And it ultimately boils down to the importance of real tangible things. Like they're about to begin the quantitative easing that will end this current monetary system, because not only is President Trump is saying that he's referencing that we are supposed to be the biggest powerhouse type of thing, but yet we're behind the curve, so we should have already been lower than all those other nations. So I'm thinking, like, if they're already negative yielding bonds and all that other stuff over there, we're supposed to be better than that as far as being even lower, and that's problematic because once you take the world reserve currency negative and interest rates negative, and there, as Charles mentioned, like, how will people earn anything? That destroys the whole concept of capitalism, because if you can't invest money to receive something back and let it grow, then what are you investing for? Like, so that's going to disrupt investing in general, as we've known it. So yeah, something has to be done, definitely. It won't be pretty.
Yes, certainly. And whatever happened to like getting the debt under control, whatever happened to the Fed is doing political things, whatever happened to all of this stuff, right? All of these, a large majority of people voted for candidate Trump because he was saying he was going to fix the economy, not continue it like it is, right? So I mean, I don't know. I really don't understand it. I'm having a difficult time grasping it because people just, they're either avoiding it or they're in denial or they're just unleashing their anger. And it's like, well, 4D chess. He's playing 4D chess. He's one up in the Fed right now. So he's not really attacking them or bullying them, but he's setting them up and they don't know it yet. And it's like, come on, he's not, right?
Yeah, and as a follow-up from that, what the mainstream media grabbed out of Jerome Powell's little presentation is that, as it says here, Fed is not at all expecting a recession, saying economy continues to perform well. And so I'm thinking, like, really? And then I saw somebody post that, the late fall, prior to the great financial crisis, Ben Bernanke was saying that everything looks great on our end. We can't foretell or see anything possibly going wrong. And then we surely know what happened immediately after that. The markets began to tank. So so this is a warning sign. This is probably more so like for those that are the insiders, when a central banker comes out and says that they can't see a recession coming, that's probably the switch that probably got flicked on, where they say, okay, everybody now, it's time to withdraw because we've been given a signal of time to exit.
Yes, certainly, definitely. Great points there. Mike, did you see on Monday this report that CNBC launched, actually, and it's amazing that they did that, right? But it was about, I don't know, like what Wall Street firm this was, but apparently, and obviously, like Lawrence Kotlikoff, he's one of the great people that hashes this out, right? Even though he's at Harvard, we won't ding him for that because he does talk about like the need to immediately cut government spending and hike taxes big time, because that's what needs to happen if you're actually going to fix it, but I don't think there's a fix.
Yeah.
But on CNBC, there was this report came out that said that the actual debt level in the United States is 2,000% GDP, right?
Yeah.
So I actually did the math, right? I did the math. Actually, Google did the math for me. But because this ties into a question that we had last week, which is, what is fair value, right? What is fair value for gold? What's a fair price for gold?
Yeah.
So doing the math, if you, because like the BEA, right, they estimate that the GDP for 2018 was like, I don't know, it's like 20 trillion, like 20 point something trillion. I don't know the exact number, but I just, used 20 trillion to make the numbers easy. Mm-hmm. So like 2,000% of 20 trillion is like $400 trillion, right? So think about this. If the debt level is actually $400 trillion, because like on debtclock.org it's like 22.5 or something like that.
Yeah.
But if the real debt is $400 trillion, right? Then what you do is you divide that by the number of ounces of gold there are. Now, someone also, that's another thing out there, like, you're just some liberal, you can't be doing that because, that's not just government debt, that's all types of debt. And then, so I put in a note afterwards, I was like, well, I'm doing that because isn't one of the mainstream arguments, well, we just do it to ourselves anyway. So, yes, I'm freely using all the debt, right? State, local, all this and all that. But it's just for fun, and it's just to get people thinking, right?
Yeah.
If you divide that $400 trillion debt by the 8,000, I used 8,000, right? Tons, right? And then I converted that to ounces. Google did that for me because that number is crazy high.
Yeah.
And then, so basically the bottom line is the fair price for gold right now, if you cancel out the debt, is $1.5 million per ounce. That's how much hyperinflation we've already had, right? And then, so what's the fair price of silver? Well, I used 16 ratio because for longer in American history than not, right? For more time than we have, the gold to silver ratio was set at 16. That's like $95,000 an ounce silver.
$95,000.
Yes,
wow.
Yes. Yeah. So people are like, this is crazy. All this $10,000 gold, $50,000 gold, $100,000 gold. Well, if you want to take that report at face value at $400 trillion debt and divide it by the amount of gold that we supposedly have, that's $1.5 million.
Wow. Yeah. So I just grabbed that article and I shared it in the chat. And so that's those are some pretty large numbers there, man. $1.5 million for an ounce. And so let's just talk about how large of a number that is. And so with those numbers now. And those numbers are hyperinflationary, which means that the current environment, the financial markets are all in disarray. Purchasing power in federal and fiat currencies is gone. So so that number, so like 1.5 million is a lot in normal times, but yet in a hyperinflationary environment, that number and the amount of currency it would take to get that piece of paper is still relatively low, because if we got hyperinflation, that 1.5 could easily turn into if the Federal Reserve note still used as a pricing mechanism, it could be easily 15 million, 150 million dollars, an ounce if you reach hyperinflationary in a fiat currency, similar to what I think the price of gold and a Venezuelan bolivar, it was 1,500 bolivars at one point. Now it's 150 million bolivars, which no one actually has that amount of paper in circulation, so in their possession. So. Yeah, that's pretty large, my friend. Good math on that one.
And one of the things that Egon said to me in our interview that I did with him last week is that we really need to start stop thinking about gold in dollar terms, and this is showing that point because right now, $1.5 million based on today's number. And we haven't even gone through that third great print that someone called it on our show a while ago, that massive money printing that's just going to bring on the crack up boom.
Yeah.
But, if we think about it as $1.5 million today, think about it more in terms of what is the gold's purchasing power? That's gold's purchasing power, right? So, yes, as the dollar is hyperinflating away and that $1.5 million ounce gold ends up being 15 and then 150 million, then 150 billion, right? What's going to happen is, basically you're talking about your purchasing power. So right now the value, right? The purchasing power isn't there because the metals have been suppressed. That's another topic I want to get to.
Yeah.
But the purchasing power isn't there because the metals have been suppressed. But after the reset that we know is coming, that's what the purchasing power is actually going to be, should be, could be, if you do 100% backing. Now, obviously, I'm including the personal debt and the state and local debt and all that. So it's not quite that. So you have to cut a lot of that off. Cut the number down by 25, or you cut it by 50%. So you're talking about $750,000 worth of purchasing power, right? And then that's where you get into the whole thing where well, somebody told me I could buy a house with 500 ounces of silver, So yes, we're talking about these kind of purchasing powers, but it's just that the metals have been so suppressed over the past several decades that we don't see that in the current price, right? Or in the current value, because the spot market on the COMEX dictates the price.
For now. Yeah, no, so I'm saying for now, and eventually at some point that's going to have to give. I don't know how it's going to play out, but there will be another price mechanism, and I think you've mentioned before, the free market will then be able to, determine what an ounce of silver or gold is worth because of demand and the supply or lack thereof. So, yeah.
Yes, and I don't know if you want to move on. I don't know if you want to address chat. I don't know.
Yeah, I was about to go to the chat a little bit because once again we can go back and forth as if it's just me and you, but we got a couple people watching us. Let me see. So let's get to the chat. I don't see anything highlighted, and so I'll just basically call. Okay, we do have something highlighted. It says, so for low blood pressure, says, guys, Trump is the fall guy. His action says it all. The end is near. And so this was a while back when we were talking about the Mr. Twitter man. And keep on moving. It says 95,000 silver, can't wait, low blood pressure. Yeah, that's one of the other things. Like and this is where I think people will have to be careful, because when we're in this current paradigm of normalcy, where large numbers still carry extreme value to us because we have the reserve currency. And so we're talking about 1.5 million worth in gold nominally. Your first thought is, okay, what can I get with 1.5 million? Then you be like, man, I could buy a nice house, a couple cars, whatever it is. You can get all that stuff now, but yet put yourself in a hyperinflationary environment, which we cannot because we never experienced one in this current day and age. But try to imagine being in Zimbabwe or in Venezuela, most recent events where, the currency, the biggest note was 1 trillion. Was it 1 trillion, 100 billion? I forgot. Whatever.
It was 100 trillion.
$100 trillion note. So if you think about going from 1, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 denomination in Zimbabwe dollars for several years, and then all of a sudden you got the 1,000 coming out, the 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, the 50,000, and then so imagine how that current model and paradigm we have of a number becomes very it just becomes very distorted, because we look at 1.5 as having extreme value when hyperinflationary environment it doesn't. So seeing that word 95,000, I can't wait. I'm like, but that's 95,000 is not going to be what you think it is. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Remember, my point is just like hyperbolic, right?
Yeah,
because I'm using all the debt, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm also assuming a 100% backing.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Washington, D.C. is not going to back 100%, right?
Right.
Jim Rickards like to throw out 20% or 40% or something like that. So, it would have to come down even more from that, right?
Yeah.
So say you cut out half of that, you got 750,000, and then say, well, you're only going to back it 20 or 40%. So that's what kind of the number we're actually talking about.
Yeah.
But the point is still the same. Massive purchasing power is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's purchasing power that will come because they've been suppressed for so long. They've been artificially held down.
Yeah. And so what I was referring to is that just the mindset. And so the purchasing power will be there within the metals, but yet you refer to not pricing metals in dollar terms anymore. And that's why, because all we know is dollar pricing for everything, because it's a reserve currency, we're going to find out what it's like to begin pricing something in a newer currency or a global basket, or whatever they throw at us next from an international stage. It's going to be a different experience, because I foresee the time where if the Federal Reserve note is no longer the measuring stick and we have to measure our value in something else. Imagine when we travel outside the country and we have to convert our domestic currency, whatever that might be, into whatever the next standard is, and say, how to, $1 to 1 peso is like, 20 pesos for $1. Imagine giving one U.S. Treasury note and having to, receive, whatever that next standard will be. And we're going to get shortchanged big time on purchasing power at that point using the national currency, whatever it might be. But yeah, that's just me ranting. Forgive me.
Yes, exactly. I want to bring up another topic here, Mike.
Okay, go ahead.
Because it has to do with the suppression and prices and what's going on with gold and silver right now. So,
okay.
We always talk about like what's going on with the metals right now. So let's do that for a second.
Yeah.
On July 25th, I can't remember the exact date. I think it was July 25th. I was given an interview, or I was holding an interview with David Morgan. I was interviewing him, but I told him, I said, to me right now, it feels like there is so much like the bulls are duking it out with the bears, right? As far as our gold and silver prices about to plummet or they're about to shoot up.
Yeah.
I said that was a great thing, a great sign, and that it meant that it's very bullish for gold and silver. And I said that because, when we hear the analogy, and the analogy is true, right? Like if everybody is bullish and everybody is buying and nobody is selling, well, that's everybody was on one side of the boat and they're going to tip that boat over. On the other hand, if everybody is selling and nobody's buying, well, that's too many sellers, and they're going to tip that boat over too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you got a good balance of people duking it out, saying, oh, gold and silver's going on, they're going to plummet from here, or if you got a good number of people saying, it's about half and half, saying, oh, gold and silver are going to surge from here, sure enough, gold and silver surge. That's a sign of a healthy market. We're up right now. Right, even at the prices we're at now, call it 1820. Yeah. I did the math earlier from 1643 when we closed on July 25th. When I said that to 1820 today, silver is up over 10%. Mm-hmm. Now, here's why I'm bringing that up. This week, right? What I am seeing this week in our space, right, in the alternative media space, in the gold and silver space, what I'm seeing right now is a ton of hostility right now going back and forth. Mm-hmm. This time, it's not about the bulls and the bears fighting it out. This time it's about like people who say there's no manipulation versus people who say that there's total manipulation, right? Mm-hmm. So they're just cutthroat going after these people. Like yesterday on our featured posts, the 4 first featured posts are like 4 different posts about. One was like, oh, there's no manipulation. One of them was like, oh, there's a ton of manipulation. One of them was like, there's a ton of manipulation. The other one was like, well, there's manipulation, but let's put it in perspective. Mm-hmm. And those are just 4 of the articles. I mean, there's just been a ton of this back and forth. I called it a tug of war today between, what I call the manipulation deniers and the manipulation exposers, right? But here's my point about that. That is a good thing, right? Because that means like there's so much of this tension, and I'm looking at it just like I saw it with the bulls and the bears fighting now. So I think that this consolidation, if you want to call it that, this correction, if you want to call it that, I think it's come to an end. And I think it's come to an end very quick. My call on Monday was that the mills were going to turn this week, so we'll have to see, right? Yeah. So far it's been working out. Then again, just like in sports, if you throw a Hail Mary at the end and you win that touchdown, you won. So Hackball, he's always the underdog, and he generally gets loses, right? But, so man. I just find it very interesting right now because there's so much like people are just like livid and at each other right now about the whole. Are the markets suppressed? Are they not suppressed? And how much is it having an effect on the markets right now?
Yeah, and at the end of all that tug of war that you're referring to, the people in the middle, like, what's the objective of going back and forth on manipulation or not? Because it's going to boil down to possession. And I'm thinking, like, if people really paid attention to monetary policy, and that's going to be the killer of the global economy, is going to be too much monetary policy or monetary policy just running its course. Because I would imagine the central bankers 100 years ago, the Federal Reserve started, they never imagined it would get to this point to where they have to talk about negative and introduce tools to stay alive. Because as of now, what is starting to look like is the Federal Reserve is basically, there might be hopefully there'll be a lot of unemployed central bankers. That's what I'm hoping for. In the very best case situation, there'll be a lot of unemployed central bankers, and hopefully the closure of the Federal Reserve Bank and something else being put into place that's hopefully ran by our government. But the problem is our politicians don't know anything about finances for the country, so we're going to still be in trouble. But yeah, so at the end of the day, tug of war, silver, gold. I mean, get yourself something tangible, because as of now, the Federal Reserve will destroy your financial future at this current point, in my opinion.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And here's the other thing, right? About like this whole like 4D chess and jump one step ahead of the Fed and this and that. If he was really like, we would be he wouldn't be talking about what the Fed should or shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. He'd be talking about abolishing the Fed, right? Because we need to be having that conversation. Mm-hmm. So, you don't just, prepare them for one thing and then all of a sudden pull the carpet out from under them and abolish. No, you got to get that dialogue into the mainstream, and it's got to work itself through. Yeah. So that's another reason why I don't have a bright outlook for the future at all, that there's going to be something good coming out of monetary policy or fiscal policy for that matter.
Yeah, fiscal policy. So even talking to Charles Smith about, the possibilities of fiscal policy is simply going to be socialistic type of policies, because the government, they have to begin living up to some of those, or trying to live up to some of those promises, whether it be through MMT, the Green Deal, or UBI, and that's the best they can offer, because once again, it's their jobs are on the line too. They want to get reelected to fill out their lifelong sentence. Like you see here, notice I said lifelong sentence as a political figure, so they can get all those benefits of retirement and benefits, and yeah.
Yes, and on top of that, and people are like, "Oh, it's the Democrats, the socialists, it's the Republicans too, man. It's everybody because, right? Because we're creating a sixth branch of the military, a space force to go fight aliens in outer space. I mean, how much is that going to cost? You know what I'm saying? So it's both sides of the aisle. It's not the Democrats, it's not the Republicans, it's everybody in Washington. Massive spending spree that's coming one way or another, and it's probably going to be a combination of both of those things. So everybody's going to be happy because we're going to stand up the sixth branch of the military to go fight aliens in outer space, and we're going to give everybody free money and free college and free healthcare and free housing and unicorns and rainbows. That's what's coming, right? So
unicorns and rainbow. It's all right. So let's get into the chat.
Gold at the end of the rainbow too.
Your best bet would be use that free stuff and get you something tangible. So somebody mentioned Ford Motor Company. And so they have some issues, been downgraded to junk status with their bonds. And so that's one of the things that's close to home because I actually drove past the Ford headquarters this past weekend. And I'm thinking just the automotive sector, it's going to be very, very problematic because once again, who's going to be willing to take on new debt to look good in a car that they probably can't afford necessarily. And it doesn't appreciate over time. So it's going to be interesting to say. So yeah, definitely I'm aware of that. And so we have yet to have a call in. I'm waiting for somebody to give us a call. I know definitely there's some people out there that got some thoughts. If we don't get to your question in the chat, don't be afraid to call in and have your question answered. And so there is a question here. It looks like it says, Mike, I believe a while back you suggested currency that physically contains a certain amount of P metals interwoven as threads in a currency. Have you developed that thought any further? Mark, great question. So that concept is just an idea of where, we know we will not return back to the concept of having a backed fiat currency. I don't really think the government will put themselves in a tight pinch to back something again to where, it will give numbers like you gave us earlier. And so a suggestion, if people cared about honest policies when it comes to our monetary system, the way to instill confidence back into the public during this whole little collapse would be to take metals, either put it back into the hands of the people directly, which will be heavier and clunkier, or fractionally incorporate and intertwine or infuse rather metals into notes so that people can see that they got a gold dollar and they got a sliver of gold in or whatever, and because the technology is available, and that would be a way to use the word gold and silver, put it back out into people's hands, and you don't have to have tonnage really out in the streets because you can do it in a way where you can infuse it in notes. So, it won't happen on a national level in the way I would like for it to happen. But, if it came about or suggested, I think people would definitely have more confidence in the system again. Because as of now, unfortunately, the whole what's going to be rolled out next is going to be crypto based. So we'll see how that all pans out. But what are your thoughts on that, Paul?
Yeah, but either way, we're going to have a massive, massive crisis first.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to do anything until there is a crisis and they're absolutely forced to do it. So, my outlook is very pessimistic before we get to this next system because, I can see what's coming, right?
Yeah.
And, we can just look to the examples for this, right? We can see Zimbabwe. We can see, and I saw those videos, man. It's heart-wrenching to people setting people on fire in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's like, this stuff is not good at all. And, this is what we're going to have to end up facing.
Yeah.
And it also reminds me, so that's one aspect. It's just talking about fire. Because that's talking about, in my book that nobody's ever read, right? I don't think anybody's ever read my book. And it's a horrible book because I haven't had the time to proofread it correctly. And it's free, right? But one of the things I say is, there's going to be fire on the streets in America. And it's not just going to be in, some inner city, poverty area, that it's going to be in the suburbs, it's going to be in the posh neighborhood. There is going to be some serious calamities coming.
Yeah.
And, think about like what happened in Mexico last year. Remember when that, people were, do you remember here a few years ago when there was that epidemic in like 2008 when gas prices shot up to like $5 a gallon? People were drilling holes in gas tanks on their cars to get the gasoline out of that, right?
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, they were doing that. In Mexico last year, they were tapping into the gas pipelines, and the pipeline freaking blew up, and like 80 people just burned to death. Did you see that, Mike?
I did not see that either.
So yeah, when I say fire, I'm not being like hyperbolic, and I'm not being like figurative. I'm talking like literally. There is going to be fire and blood on the streets. I mean, people have to get prepared for this.
Yeah.
And it's what I said on Monday, right? It's gold, silver, and skills. It's those three things. And even if you have those three things, that does not guarantee your survival. All it means is that you have a fighting chance. That's all it means.
Yeah.
It
puts you one step ahead.
So I can,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Fighting chances for my family, right? That's why I stack for my family, and so I can be part of the rebuilding, right? Because we need the people that because it's honest money, right? And it's the honest people that have been prudent to do it. So the honest people are going to be the ones that are rebuilding, right? We don't need to let the fiat paper, big government pushers doing the rebuilding.
Yeah, I agree. I had a thought, but I lost a thought. But let's keep it moving. In the chat, anybody got any thoughts or whatnot? Feel free to let us know, and we can keep it moving. And one thing that comes to mind now, that you were mentioning, is that the in-between process between where we're at now and the rebuild, or whatever it's going to look like. No telling how long that stretch is going to be. And for some reason, I just have a intuition type of intuitive feeling that 2020 to 2030 will be an adjustment period for everybody. And during that time frame, that's when everything behind the scenes will take place, and we're going to be introduced to a lot of new concepts. One of them is when it comes to employment. I got some thoughts on employment, how once there's going to be a massive amount of layoffs coming up soon. They're already starting to occur now, but there's going to be a reshift of what employment looks like at the end of that, because if the government ends up rolling out some UBI, that's going to be an income source where employers are going to say, hey, you're already getting $1,000 or whatever a month from the government. Now let's look at ways of getting you more money without me having to take on the cost of in retirement, insurance, and all that stuff like that, which is they're going to have to iron that out. So I got a feeling that there's going to be what I call affiliate employment, where you won't work directly for them, but you'll be a consultant contractor type of thing if you choose to live beyond that universal basic income. Because after this reset takes place, or restructuring takes place, I don't think employers, especially of international companies, will need human labor the way that they use it now, because they're going to definitely roll out more robots. Amazon's going to have nothing but robots, maybe a little human labor force in the office slightly, and then a whole AI, artificial intelligence, algorithm, machine learning, all that stuff right there within this next 10 years it's going to restructure how we look at work and redefine how we get work. So I think that's going to definitely hurt a lot of people's living standards, because you may not have the same opportunities unless you're self-employed or an entrepreneur or whatever it might be. But I'm not sure what took me down that rabbit hole. But this next 10 years is going to be very interesting for how we gauge and determine our value as far as work is concerned. So
yes, great points. I think it's Adidas, but I'm not sure. But one of these companies, and I think it's in Germany, I don't even think it's in China, but like one of these companies has like this shoe production where there's not a human being involved in it at all. Mm-hmm. And also, I can't remember, I think it's Gigabyte, but I'm just going off of memory here. But there's a manufacturer that manufactures computer graphics cards where there's not one human being touching this graphics card at all, right? So yes, what you're talking about, whereas before there was all this, there's not going to be that anymore. And I think it's going to come down to like what you see more in like the third world, because I think that's where the U.S. is headed, to the third world. Yeah. So, I think you make some great points. I would also like to take it at a different angle and say, well, think about this too. It's also just basically going, and I guess the word, and I guess it's appropriate, right? Even though I don't like jumping on word bandwagons, but the gig economy, right? People talk about the gig economy, but that's true, right? Because especially if there's UBI, people are just going to be trying to figure out ways of how to scrape by, right? Whether it's, and it's going to be several things, right? People talk about income streams, and they're going to get crushed with all these REITs and stuff. That's a whole other topic, I think. But housing's been going up for 10 years after went up for 10 years after it's been saved once. It's going to keep going up for another 10. I don't think so. And let's talk about hyperinflation. But we're talking about income streams. People need to have different income streams. That's how it's going to be. There's going to be UBI, which isn't going to pay for anything because it's going to just be hyperinflating the currency way.
Yeah.
Then, people are going to be selling stuff on Craigslist. That's going to be one way. And then, if they got a car, they're going to be Uber driving it. That's going to be one way. And then, they might, under the table, wash some dishes at a pizzeria. That's another way. All of these little things people are just going to be doing. And it's just going to be like a scrappy fight for survival, if that even makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Oh, man, it does. Because think about our standard of living in this country. We've been beyond blessed and privileged because we've had the reserve currency status and the concept of credit, financialization of our entire monetary system where, the idea that you can go finance any aspect of your life right now with zero down, or they'll probably give it to you for free and give you a rebate in the form of like, we'll give you $100 to take out this, this loan. That type of stuff is underway now to where, if you had to downsize your house or get rid of a car or all those, if you had a shrinking in your lifestyle, which would be close to what second, third world status looks like, where you got the bare minimum, it's going to change our priorities, change our values and everything else. And that's one thing I've always loved about having traveled outside the country is that the lifestyle is so laid back. It's more family focused. People aren't ripping and running, going nowhere fast. And so I think that's what we're going to get back to. But along with that, we're going to have a chance to actually use our brains again. And so having everything at our fingertips in the form of a smartphone has dumbed down this generation, especially our kids. Like, yeah, it troubles me that most kids don't have a natural GPS system where you can just intuitively tell north from south without having to look at their phone. So, yeah.
Yes, when I was 16, there was no graduated license or anything like that. I was driving across the country in my pickup truck when I was 16 years old, driving across the country with a map and, drawing lines to figure out which was the best route. Now, you say turn left and they turn right. It's like, come on. But, I was on top of that, right? Because here's what you're getting at. Right now, the answer is, how can the, government's going to help me out? How can the government help me out? How can I, get the government involved in this? But in other places, it's, the family. That's where it starts. It starts with the family. And the family is the support system. It's not the government. It's not supposed to be the government. Right? Because it can't be the government. Right? The government only gets in the way or gets out of the way. So it's got to come back to, and whether it's, I get it, right? The deep state globalists have done a great job of destroying the family structure in this country. So, that's a whole nother can of worms in and of itself. But traditionally speaking, yes, whether it's your friends or whether it's your family or whether it's your community, something like that is going to come down to that basic level of the support structure. That's where it's going to be.
Yeah, we're going to get back to what matters most, I guess. And so hopefully from that point, there's amongst the chaos, hopefully people will realize that, it's about bringing it home and taking care of a business from home. So, yeah. So we haven't had a call in yet. I'm very disappointed. I'm very shocked, Paul, I must admit. It's always good to hear somebody else's voice other than yours. There's nothing wrong with your voice, but it's always good to hear a stranger's voice. And so let me see. There's a question. It says, Mike, did you see my Cyprus comment from earlier in the chat? I did not, but I'll get to that in a second. And it looks like, Paul, we might have a call. Let's see.
Nice.
Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How you doing, Mike? There's low blood pressure, Corpus Christi, Texas.
Low blood pressure. I'm doing good, my friend. Good to hear your voice. I appreciate you for supporting us with a phone call. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I want to stir up everybody's mind. I was going to ask you, do you think this negative interest rate is going to cause a bank run? Because I want it to.
Negative interest rate causes a bank run. I think ultimately, there will be a run for sure because people are going to run and try to withdraw their funds. Now, whether you can get it or not is going to be the question. And so, speaking about banks, I want to touch on that because of our president calling for negative interest rates. Jamie Dimon yesterday mentioning that they're preparing for negative rates. That lets me know that right now is probably the time to probably start taking out a little bit more than you probably would normally, so that you don't have to wait until you get a mainstream message across the Fox News saying banks are closed or whatever. And then at that point, that's when people tend to run when it becomes mainstream. Now they're giving you hints at what could be coming with negative interest rates, meaning they're going to charge you. So, I would say, you probably better off running to the bank right now before the herd gets there, in my opinion. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, that's great. And that's not negative interest rates, but just no interest at all.
Yeah.
That is one of the exact reasons, right, why, I basically only have the bare minimum in the bank right now as it is anyway, because, when now my savings account has always been very, very, very humble. I mean, there's just a teeny tiny amount in there. There's basically nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, when you're getting like a penny in interest a month or like $10 in interest a month, basically absolutely nothing, right? Like the actual interest rate was like 0.00001 or something crazy like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that caused me to actually, say, okay, I'm not getting anything here, and I don't like what's coming down the pike, so I'm going to bring my money out of this system. And if you have negative interest rates, that's just going to turbocharge it.
Yeah.
Because now, that money is now a perishable good in the bank account, right? Use it or lose it, or get it out. So, yes, I think it will cause. And why these things aren't happening now? Well, we don't know, because it could be happening right now. We're just not being told about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. And then two, there's so much manipulation in the markets right now that, how these markets are even held together, I think is because of pulling and pushing all the different levers.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. Low blood pressure. I appreciate your calling, my friend. Thanks.
All right, Mike. All right, Paul. Have a good day.
Be good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's another thing. The whole incentive now will be to get you to spend. Like monetary policy at this particular point in time, it's not effective if people aren't spending. And so when you got the Fed looking for inflation, they're talking about, on the consumer end, they need to see more inflation as far as the consumer side of things, as far as the things that they actually track, which, clearly is not inclusive of all the things that's really inflated, because asset prices are the true indicator of what's going on. But the whole goal is to get people to spend. So lower rates is great for the banking sector, they think, because now you got to start spending or lose out. So I'm not sure how the banks are going to be profitable with that model, apart from them taxing cash and charging you a fee for storage. But beyond that, I'm not sure who's going to really be looking to borrow or borrowing, when it's incentivized, and if they give you a loan and you don't have to pay them back as much, that's going to be an incentive, but I don't think it's going to work either. But we have another call. I'll make sure we get this call. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Typo from Massachusetts. Nice to hear your voice.
Typo from Massachusetts. How you doing this afternoon? What's on your mind?
I am just curious. I just heard Hong Kong's offer to buy the stock exchange, London Stock Exchange, and I was wondering what you guys think about it, and whether that means China is actually, these corporations and governments making these decisions just becoming laughable.
Okay, good question. I wasn't aware of that. Paul, were you aware of that at all?
No, I am not qualified to talk about like the Hong Kong and China situation, just because I'm not following it.
Right. So I just typed it in as you were speaking, Typo, and so I pulled up on the screen, and it just says Hong Kong makes 37 billion bid for the London Stock Exchange. So so apart from not knowing about it, my initial thought is that I've noticed how over the last decade or so, China has made an initiative to try to put the yuan out there to prepare it for, I guess, their plans of the One Belt, One Road initiative. So I would imagine this has something to do with furthering the usage of the yuan by eventually putting the Chinese yuan, intermixing it with this Hong Kong exchange, because I know they got the currency swap agreements and all those facilities for that purpose. So I'd imagine it has something to do strategically for that One Belt, One Road down the line. So that's just my thought.
The exchange is making a bid for the London Stock Exchange. We're talking a 13 week.
Cut that down. Okay, so that's my thought there. And other than that, something to look into further, I believe.
Yeah, and they did. They are in I'm pretty sure, and this happened a few years ago, but they have like something big going on with the LBMA too, and I'm pretty sure that you can get LBMA metal priced in yuan, Chinese yuan.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the very core, fundamentally speaking, we're talking about the shift from west to east, and this is just further evidence of that shift from west to east.
Yeah.
Some people would say it's by design. Some people would say it's just the natural flows. But either way, yes, we're talking about the Western powers losing their power, and we're talking about, the Eastern powers rising up, so to say.
Yeah. Typo, I appreciate you calling and sharing that. Definitely keeping us informed, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. And the other thing I'm interested in, if you don't mind, is I recently brought you up to somebody, and they said, well, don't worry about the banks. The FDIC will insure you. And I thought, okay, but they're going to replace your paper money with paper money. So if we have an absurd inflation rate, then what is your money that they're going to replace with is? It's just ridiculous. It's become, I think, so many people are becoming aware of this that I just want to thank you for bringing it out and talking about it and having live shows and having people call in so that we can get an estimate of how clearly people are seeing this as a ridiculous Ponzi scheme. So
right.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for calling. Thanks for sharing that information with us. Appreciate it. Have a good day. Yeah, man,
and I just want to say one thing on that too, because this is the other thing, and she's absolutely right. That's a great point. You know what? You're going to get back fiat dollars after a banking crisis, whether it's just localized or whether it's systemic. But the other thing, and people don't understand this either, is this is something that can take a long time to sort out. So even if you do get some or all of that money back, and it's capped after a certain amount, right?
Yeah.
But I don't remember if it's still 200,000 or if they brought it back down to 100,000 or not.
It's going up.
They don't have that much in the bank, so I'm not worried about it.
They go put it up to 350,000. Watch this next go run. Go ahead.
Yeah. But how long is it going to take to sort that stuff out, right? That is not going to be an orderly process. That's going to be stuff that's going to have to go through the court system because the banks are going to sue on that. Yeah. You got the insurance companies involved. You got the banks involved. The lawyers are going to be involved. The government's involved. How long is it going to take to get those fiat dollars? That's going to take a long time.
Now, we have a call here, so we'll get to that in 1 second. But I talked about the whole bankruptcy process, and so it's kind of built into the cake, according to Dodd-Frank, that the FDIC is going to be given responsibility to help resolve those issues. And already in those reports submitted to the FDIC, they talk about bankruptcy. So they're going to file bankruptcy. They're going to try to wipe away a good portion of that and stick creditors, which are unsecured, which are the people who have deposits in their accounts. So we have a call. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello, my name is Leo. How you doing, fellas? I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes, how you doing, Leo? What's on your mind today?
I just want to make a statement regarding the LBMA getting purchased by the Hong Kong Stock Exchange.
Okay.
We've been seeing a lot of transition from the physical market to starting to come back into play. And with all of the trading that's been going on, I can't remember exactly what they call it, with the trading of gold being sent over to the LBMA. That's
exchange for physical.
Paper contracts.
Okay, exchange for physical. Paul mentioned, yeah.
That on the other end of that, somebody actually has to have some physical, and when I think the LBMA, they bailed out the CME. They bailed out the commodity exchange in the States. And it looks like now the real physical holders, which, those guys in Asia, are probably bailing out the LBMA.
That very well could be. I know that, the banks that were in charge of setting the price mechanism and all that stuff like that, I think just recently Saxo, I think just dropped out. And so over the years, we've witnessed more and more of those too big to fail banks drop out. So they're dropping out of fear of something. So I don't know myself, but I'm sure we're going to find out sooner or later. So moral of the story is get your weight up, get physical. Like, don't play around with paper, don't play around with digital. Just get physical, and you minimize a lot of risk.
Yeah, it's kind of like the smaller fish getting eaten by the middle size and the bigger and the bigger. And it's also kind of in play with China's strategy as far as how they gain other types of commodities. Maybe the LBMA at some point made a deal or loans or something that they can't pay back because for an exchange to only go for $30-some-odd billion that's been in existence for hundreds of years, for over 100 years,
yeah.
It's kind of going pretty cheap, and they're going to their biggest competitor, and it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, that's very true. That is $37 billion. It is relatively cheap when you're given the fact that I know China's trying to get rid of a lot of those treasuries, so I'm assuming they're just recycling all that currency and getting as much value out of the system as they can. So, and getting an exchange like that would definitely pay off in the long run, especially as you roll out that One Belt, One Road. So that's going to be, we're going to hear more news about the One Belt, One Road in the next 10 years, I think, depending on how all this stuff pans out. So, but hey, I appreciate your calling, my friend. Thanks for the thoughts. Be good.
Can I add one thing on that, Mike?
Go ahead.
Those are great points because, yes, Harvey Organ is a preemptive authority on this, tracking the numbers every single day as far as the EFPs, the exchange for physicals, which is where the contracts on the COMEX are sent over to the LBMA. So, yes, at its core, the LBMA is and has been for a couple of years now actively bailing out the COMEX by essentially taking over these contracts to deliver physical upon it or to settle with a fiat bonus. So, and then on top of that, just in the last month or 2 months now, there has been a massive import. And if you look at the charts, over time, gold has been leaving London, right? Leaving London. And then 2 months ago, bam, gold is all of a sudden back in, almost what? Now they're out of gold after all this EFP stuff that's been going on. Yeah. So, yes, there are some serious things that are going on in the global gold markets. Also, when it comes to buying on the cheap, China buying on the cheap and stuff, you remember a couple decades ago when you'd see these auctions, right? The Chinese would come in and they go to the factories and then they'd auction off the factory equipment and they just buy up all these factories and this equipment and just take it back to China on the dirt cheap. Yeah. That's what they're doing now. But if all this stuff is panning out, that's what they're doing. But it's now the financial sector, right? Yeah. So what happened after they grabbed up all these factory equipment and took all that stuff back to China? And as the industry was collapsing here in the United States, it's just gutted manufacturing, and there's no way we could even get it back because it's not like we still have it. We just dust it off and start all over again. Same thing is happening with the finance then. So it's not like we could just start back up the stock market and get it going. No, they own everything now. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, this is just, there's some seriously interesting stuff that's in the works then.
Exactly. I do agree. And so as we are approaching an hour point, Mr. Half Dollar, I think it's time to get ready to dial back, if I'm not mistaken. I think we want to definitely keep this under an hour if we can. And so with that being the case, any last thoughts or anybody call in or whatnot, we'll get you on here. But other than that, it's been great hanging out. And if you have not, as of yet, don't be afraid to donate a thumbs up to the channel. Just click the little thumbs up and then, go down there. And also, as Paul mentioned earlier, I want to acknowledge your thought about having written a book. And so in the description here, if you guys go follow Paul on his Twitter account, you can get directed to that information he shared with you. So definitely, if you're on Twitter, go subscribe to Paul Half Dollar. Let's get his count up a little bit so he can get more, so he can get active on Twitter like our president.
yeah, I don't even tweet. Maybe a month or two. But I do have one more final thought, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead.
It has to do with coming back just to the 10-year note. Because there has been a massive move in yield on the 10-year note just in the past week, including the past couple days. We've gone from 1.42% over 1.7, 1.73% on the 10-year note. That is a massive move over just a couple days. Yeah. So that's telling you a couple things, right? What that's telling you is the market is now thinking that there's going to be a 25 basis point cut instead of a 50 basis point cut. Yeah. So that's one thing. The other thing, it's showing you just how strong gold and silver really are right now because, $1,518 are pretty much holding as support levels, even as interest rates are spiking up, right? Yeah. Because, the apologists and the enablers and the status quo pushers are saying, well, that's because people are moving out of safe haven assets such as the treasuries and they're moving into risk assets such as the stock market, which the stock market isn't really rising anyway. Yeah. It's just kind of in this range right now where it might break out to new all-time highs. I think it could. But watch the yield on that 10-year note going into the end of the week because that's going to provide more clues. And it just shows you how strong gold and silver are right now because they have been holding steady even in the face of this massive spike up in yield, right? Which is indicative of people moving out of the bond market, selling bonds, price of the bond drops, yield goes up. Yeah. So that's just my closing thought there. And then if that turns, because, the Fed's not going to bring it out because they're not talking until they give their press statement next Wednesday. But if somehow the market starts anticipating that it's going to be more than a 25 basis point cut, then, because they talk about the Fed whisperers and it gets leaked or whatever. Then, and if yield starts going back down again, gold and silver could get those turbochargers put back on them real quick. So it's going to be interesting. I'm watching 10-year yield pretty close this week, and also looking for Trump's attacks on Fed on Twitter, which are only going to increase from here on out until next Wednesday.
Yeah, or until something gives.
We're going to see how auto sales are doing on Friday with the retail sales reports. That's going to be interesting too.
Yeah, and so when it comes to retail sales report with the autos, I'm already anticipating that it's not going to be pretty. And so, yeah, the Ford situation doesn't help and everything else. So, yeah, me being in the Motor City, yeah, it's going to be interesting times, man. But I want to direct everybody's attention to our sponsor for the channel, sdbullion.com. Make sure you guys go over there and get your weight up. Fiscal Metals over there, lowest on the internet, in my opinion. And other than that, if you guys are interested, support the channel with some Silver Doctors t-shirts and just show some love for the channel there. So there's information down in the description. And other than that, it looks like that is a wrap for us today. We should be back, hopefully get another chance to connect with you sometime later this week if, schedule works out for everybody. But as always, it's been fun hanging out, and we'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Peace.